Welcome back to another weekly GMBN Tech Show. Coming up on this week's show, we check out some new bikes from Nukeproof and from Norco. We have a look at the new carbon fibre XC and trail wheels from Mavic. And there's also some homemade tools from you lot. Okay, so jumping straight into the show with a little bit of a different start for a change. I thought we would start having a look at some different things going on, bring in some topics and that. And this is actually a bit of a pub discussion, I'll confess. I was talking with a friend the other day over a pint, socially distanced of course, about the coolest bike names out there, because there's a lot of really cool names that go under everyone's radars. Now, we're not going to talk about brand names, we'll come to that another time. But on today's show, I want to talk about the coolest mountain bike names on the market. Now, I'm going to kick off with a few, and well, basically we're going to figure out what is the coolest name out there. In fact, there's going to be loads I've not referenced here, so I want you lot to join in the comments and we'll see what everyone votes for is the coolest name. So the first one, I want to bring you to a bike by Kona. Now, I have mentioned this before, it's not strictly a mountain bike, it's kind of a single speed or a cruiser, the Nukeproof. Now, Kona are famous for naming their bikes, or certainly were when they started, after features around volcanic islands and around Hawaii, in particular Cinder Cone, Lava Dome, Fire Mountain, Explosive, all that sort of stuff. Now, they named their beach cruiser after a reef triggerfish called the Nukeproof. Now, the bike is commonly known as the Humu or the Humu. Now, when they brought out the full name version of it, another brand out on the market, and I need to know who it is. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. They brought out a bike and had 2 additional letters on it. So Kona like, well, we need to have the biggest name, don't we, obviously. So they changed it for the next year and they put deluxe on the end of it. So it was the Nukeproof Deluxe, and it took up the entire length of the top tube. On stupidity alone, it is ridiculous. I love it. I think that is one of the coolest names. Next up, over to Orange Bikes in the UK. So kind of a pretty cool name, quite different. And that name itself actually stems from All Range, and it got abbreviated to Orange over the years. Now, the founders of Orange Bikes are actually huge Stanley Kubrick fans. So their first real model of bike, they called it the Clockwork. Orange Clockwork, as opposed to the Clockwork Orange. Very iconic film. So that is kind of cool as well. And I'm not sure how many people know that story. Now, Marin Bikes obviously hail from Marin County, arguably the home of mountain biking, where those Californian pioneers founded the sport. Now, there's loads of cool names they've had in the past. They've had Muirwoods, they've had Bear Valley, Eldridge Grade. Trying to look here for some inspiration. There's all sorts of stuff, and it's all named after the trails in Marin County and the overall area. So in recent times, they've got the San Quentin, they've got the Alcatraz, of course, which is in the San Francisco Bay. But more recently, they've got the Wolf Ridge, and I think that's a really, really cool name for a bike. It just suits it, and it's actually named after a trail as well. If you can better that, let us know in those comments. Now, the next one, I'm not sure how to tackle this. Shall we just say it was a bit of a taboo company as far as names went. So Cove Bikes from Cove on the North Shore of Vancouver, they were famous for having some very alternative names. It definitely sort of rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. So I mean, no offence to anyone out there, but I want to tell you about this. So just some of their names in the past: Stiffy, Foreplay, Peeler, Shocker. Don't look that one up. So they've got some really obscure names out there. Now, their top of the range hardtail was a titanium frame one. They called it the Hummer. Now, before I knew this, I actually just thought, oh, it's kind of like the Humvee, you know, Hummer. It seems just designed as a tank to just track it across ground. But then they brought out a cheap version of it, basically. So it was another single speed style frame. It's made from steel, and that one was called the Hand Job. And their advert said, if you can't afford a Hummer, get a hand job. I'll leave it to you to decide where you want to take that one, but on weirdness and for having the sheer guts to call a bike that, I think that's pretty cool, even though it is pretty scandalous and outrageous. Don't want to offend anyone, but it's pretty funny. Now, over to Pivot Bikes, actually, for a real cool one, the Pivot Les. So that's their hardtail bike. Pivot Les, Pivotless. Get it? It's actually pretty good, isn't it? Oh, it's daft, but I love it. I think it's cool. But the coolest name of all time, I think, by a mile, is the Specialized Stump Jumper. Stump Jumper. Doesn't that say everything you need to know about a mountain bike? what are you going to be doing on it? Over stumps. Wicked. I think that's the coolest name out there. But please correct me, there's going to be loads of cool names I want you to put down there that I've forgotten, because you're all going to have cool bike names out there, I'm sure. And there's going to be bike names out there that have always stood out to you. So what are they? And what is the coolest name? Any of the ones I've read out? So just to go over those again, Kona Humu Humu Nuka Nuka Apua, Orange Clockwork, Marin Wolf Ridge, Cove Hummer, Pivot Les, and Specialized Stump Jumper. Or do you disagree with me totally? And if you've got a better name, let us know in those comments. Okay, so let's dive into news then, and we've got a crammed show this week. In fact, there's so much news going on, I've had to sort of strip down other parts of the show. Now, the first one I want to talk to you about is the brand new Nukeproof Mega. Yeah, this is the V4 edition, and this is it on screen. Now, you might have seen some pro racers using this bike, but to be fair, in that bright yellow racing colourway, you could have easily mistaken it for the V3 edition, which they've also been running, same exact colourway and spec over the last season or so. Okay, so it's a total redesign on this frame. So some numbers for you. Up front, it's 45% stiffer at the head tube, and it's 14% stiffer down by the bottom bracket. So that's where you put the power into the back wheel via that transmission. So that's actually a real key part of the bike. Now, it still uses a 4-bar suspension system, but the front triangle is revised slightly. In fact, you'll probably notice it shares a lot more in appearances with the Reactor, which of course is a 130mm travel, shorter travel platform. Now, like the Reactor, it comes in 29 and 27.5 inch options, and it also has room in the front triangle there for a full 750ml water bottle on all sizes. So that is a very cool thing. Now, they've achieved that. Of course, they've moved things around. I'm going to talk to you about the suspension in a minute. But ultimately, if you look at the older design, in fact, there's a shot here, you can see the yellow one, I think it's on the right-hand side, and the silver or an unmarked one on the left. So the yellow one is basically, well, just look at the difference on them. Look at the seat mast area on the V3, and you'll see by removing that and moving that linkage up, you're given a lot more room in that front triangle, and they've actually totally revised the rear suspension stuff on there. So some more shots coming past. So the carbon layup on the frame, so they did have carbon on that V3 model as well, but the carbon ones now have internal channels for cable routing. So not only is it a cinch to pop those cables straight through like you see on some other brands out there, it also means your cables aren't going to rattle anymore. So you can have a completely silent bike if you want. And as far as the rear hanger on the bike goes, they've got the SRAM on there, the universal derailleur hanger. So that's a really cool thing, and we will be seeing more of that. Okay, so what else is there? So there's carbon and alloy models. Here's a carbon one, and here is an alloy one for you on screen. As with Nukeproof, they do loads of builds all the way from the budget friendly all the way up to the top spec one. But even the top spec one, the prices are incredible. So just skipping to prices for a second, it's actually ridiculous. So the cheapest model is $2,699 in UK, pound sterling. That's the same in dollars, and that's 3,149 in euros. And it jumps up to the top of the range model, like the best one, 5,499 sterling and dollars, or 6,399 in euros. Now, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, that is a hell of a lot of money, but compared to what you get from many other brands, it is astonishing. Now, let's just jump back again. There's all the builds coming up on screen here. Now, there's 5 frame sizes, ranging from small through to double XL. So they've totally revised their sizing on there to basically bring them in line with some of the other manufacturers out there. You notice that Santa Cruz and a few others do double XLs. So do double XL now, which is it's bigger still, but it's nearer to the XL that they had previously. So their range is actually bang up to date in terms of sizing. Now, speaking of reach, the reach goes from 435 on the size small up to 520. It's got a 64-degree head angle on the front. It's got 435 or 440mm chainstays, depending on which frame's wheel size, even option you pick out the two. And it's got size-specific geometry, which means the seat tube angle gets steeper on the bigger sizes. Hooray! At last. So they're actually developing something, well, they're actually referring to something that they call seat or saddle offset. The higher you have a saddle on a bike, the further backwards you're going to sit. So if you're tall like me, this can become a problem if the seat angle is too slack on the bike. But the higher and higher and higher it gets, the worse it gets. And no matter what the rear suspension does on a bike, right, even if you have it on the locked out setting, you can still crank it through the travel. Think about it, it's a giant lever squashing down on that shock. And when you're really wrenching up on those climbs, that, you know, really trying to get the power through the cranks, you can just sit there just going up and down on the suspension up a hill. I'm really pleased to see them starting to refer to this sort of thing. They're not just growing the bike per size, they're actually thinking about angles and thinking about where that end rider is going to be having a saddle. Super cool from those guys. Love it. A load more shots on screen there. I'm going to have one soon, hopefully, so I'll show you some images of it as soon as I do, but enjoy those wicked shots on screen. Okay, and now over to Mavic for their new, or their latest, Crossmax iteration of the wheels. So the Crossmax wheels are super famous. They really made it popular to buy a complete wheel set when a lot of bike shops really were selling rims, spokes and hubs. Now, of course, you can still do that, and it's a great way to do wheels. And of course, building wheels is great fun, but you can't beat the convenience of buying a set of wheels, especially when they're this good. So on screen are a few shots from Mavic, of course. Now, Mavic also came up with the UST system, originally using Hutchinson and Michelin to work with the collaboration to make fully sealed rim beds and fully sealed tyres. You can run them tubeless. And these wheels, of course, are tubeless. Now, they're carbon rims on them. And there's 3 real versions of these, but they all revolve around the same hub. So they've got the ID360 hubs on there. They've got a twin ratchet design. In fact, there should be some stuff on the hubs actually whizzing past you right now. Okay, so the hubs have auto bearing adjustment on them, which is a godsend. They've got all 3 hub bodies available: microspline, spline, and of course the XD SRAM system on there. Now, the cool thing about the way they're laced together, now in the past they've had their flat bladed Zycral spokes and they've had their patented nipple style. They've kind of moved away from that a bit, but what they've also incorporated now is contactless spokes. Now, this is great because anyone who rides, in particular in dry conditions, will know when your spokes are rubbing together on a wheel, when you're really pushing, they grind and they groan on that, and it's awful. So they've basically done this, there's no noise, even under the biggest loads. Now, there's 1 spoke length as well. Now, that's really smart. Instead of having 2 or 3 different spoke lengths on a set of wheels, you're having a single spoke length, and they do actually include spare spokes. I think you get 2 and a nipple with each set of wheels. And you can also have center lock or 6-bolt options with them as well. And there's 3 main models. So we're going to start with the big boy first, the SL Ultimate. Now, this is their no holds barred XC race wheel. It's very expensive and it's very light. Retail price is €1,850 for a pair, so it's going to be slightly less in pounds and US dollars. I've not got those prices at time of filming, unfortunately. 1,349 grams though. These are 29-inch wheels with a 25mm internal width rim on them. That's pretty bonkers, isn't it? So that is a seriously light and fast set of wheels. 24 spokes on them, and of course they've got that adaptive carbon on them as well. So the adaptive carbon on the top spec wheels, I think they're about 70 grams lighter per rim than their previous design. So exceptionally light, of course, tubeless setup on those. Then I've got the SLR, which is also an XC rim, but a little wider. Now, why would you want wider? Well, maybe you're a bigger rider, you're a heavier rider, you like to run bigger tyres, you like to go lower in pressure, that sort of thing. So you're talking about 26mm rim, slightly heavier is the trade-off, 1,570 grams. But a lot better for your wallet, so you're talking €1,200. Now, lastly, there's the XLR version. So these are 30mm rims. These are the trail focused one. Although that said, they're light enough, you could ride cross country in them, no problems whatsoever. 1,610 grams, they're nice and light still, 1,190 in euros. So there's a great selection of wheels there from Mavic. And I do feel, with the fact they've just announced the SL Ultimate and the XLR there, there's probably going to be some more stuff coming from Mavic. So look forward to that. Okay, next up in news is a new bike from Norco. Now, a few of you have been riding bikes for a long time might remember the Shore from the early 2000s. The bike that was designed for a triple crown fork, like a downhill style fork, but it had slightly steeper geometry, basically designed for free riding and big mountain, riding all those gnarly trails on the Shore. Well, its back end is very different. This is it. Now look at that. How right does this thing look? So where do I start? Okay, so it's a 4-bar platform. It has a high pivot on there. It's made from alloy. It's got an idler wheel to tame that high pivot. Why would you need that? Well, the whole point with having a high pivot is you get slightly rearward moving axle path. That is fantastic when you're riding into that bigger, rougher, rockier terrain, ultimately for big bump absorption. The downside is you get a lot more chain stretch. So to get around that, you route the chain over that pivot point. So effectively, you don't get the pedal kickback. So it's going to pedal a bit more like a lower pivot bike, but you get the benefits of having a high pivot. Now there's basically two major options here as well. There's A1 and the A2, and then there's the A1 Park. So the A1 Park is designed purely for bike park. This thing comes with a bigger travel, well it's bigger travel, 10mm more on the rear. It comes with 200mm travel boxer on the front, and it's set up with downhill style gearing and a regular seat post height. There's no dropper post. But the A1 and the A2 models, both of them on screen, popping up. Obviously they're both in alloy. There's the more silver bare metal style alloy one, and then there's the crazy 90s neon style pink and blue A2 option, both of which look pretty amazing. Now this bike has some seriously impressive numbers on it, and it's got a few very cool features. So just have a look at this gallery of images here, and I'm just going to take you through some of the cool features. So all these shots are actually taken on the shore, the home of that bike, and I think they're amazing photos as well. They deserve a bit of time, to be honest. I think we don't often get sent images this cool. We're all about the tech stuff. We don't get to see the lifestyle stuff like these that often. So this bike was designed around a coil shock. I think that tells you a lot about the bike, the way it's intended to be ridden. It's designed to be ridden hard. The harder, the better. They say that you don't really want to run an air shock on this. It's not designed for it. It's not going to feel very good with that. It's available from small up to extra large, so 5 sizes there. It's designed solely around 27.5-inch wheels. They say you shouldn't run it as a mullet setup with a bigger front wheel. They're not interested in that. This bike has been designed from the ground up to run perfectly with 27.5-inch wheels. And why would you ruin a bike that looks like this? So here are some real cool side-on shots of the bike and some details of it shot in the studio. And I think you must agree with me, surely. I think this thing looks really cool. So mega steep seat angle, mega slack head angle on there, and also some size-specific geometry going on. So you have a 63-degree head angle up front, exactly what you want for riding a big travel bike. Oh, the travel, by the way, it's 180 front and rear on the A1 and A2, and it's 190 rear, 200 front on the A1 Park model. I think I did maybe mention that a minute ago. Right, so they've got a rider aligned system, so essentially you've got slightly different sizing depending on the size bike you go for, so it's going to suit you better whether you're smaller or taller. Now, they've all got 63-degree head angle on them. They've all got 44mm offset forks on them, except for the Park model, which has a slightly different one. I forget what that is. That's not important at the moment though. The seat angle is important. So 77 to 78 degrees on there. So 77 on the smaller sizes, 78 on the bigger sizes. Hurrah! So kind of like what Nukeproof are doing with theirs, getting steeper across the board there. It's got between 420 and 510mm reach, depending on the small all the way through to the extra large there. And the chainstays change size as well. So the chainstays are proportionally grown basically to the front triangle of the bike. So between 435 to 450mm chainstays from this small through to extra large. Nice one, Norco. Great to see you back on form. And now onto these, the T9 tyres. Now they're referring to T in the 9. The 9 basically is a level of how sticky they are, 9 being the highest in their range, and it will go down. And T refers to the tyre, basically, what the tyre model is. So this is the tyre range on screen. In fact, there's a whole bunch of cool shots on screen. They're calling these the T9 compound sticky fast, to insinuate they roll fast, but also super sticky rubber. Kind of contradicting, but knowing Specialized, they will have this nailed because they do seem to make alarmingly good tyres considering they're a bike manufacturer. Brilliant stuff. So there's 3 major models they're pushing here: the Hillbilly, the Butcher, and the Eliminator. They're all available in gravity casing, but the Butcher is available in trail and gravity casing. So the T9 compound highlights. So there's some shots here from their compound development facility. They say there's polymers and additives in the rubber for slow rebound control. The rubber knobbles are designed to dissipate heat instead of turning that energy into deflection or bounce. So if you don't know about slow rebound of rubber, if you think about a real hard rubber tyre, let's just say a 60A tyre and then like a 40A tyre. When you're riding on a rooty surface, if you're riding on the hard compound tyre, the knobble is still going to deform over that object, but it's going to spring back much faster. And that really does interfere with the level of grip you have. You think if you go over it on a much softer rubber, the rubber deforms around that object, it's going to basically come back slightly slower. So it's not going to affect what's going on with you on those roots or rocks or whatever the surface is quite so much. Now imagine slowing that down as well. It really accentuates a point of contact. It's almost like more suspension for your tyres. So they've also got, in, I didn't mention this, in the Eliminator tread, you can have a dual compound. So you can have T7 and T9. So T9 on the shoulders, T7 on the main tread. So perfect for the rear of a bike, maybe on an e-bike, or if you just want to be able to go a little bit quicker. On the e-bike, of course, you're just going to tear up tyres that bit more, so having a hard compound on the top means they're going to last a bit longer, and then of course on the sides, on those shoulders, when you really need that softer grip for when you're pushing into those corners, bingo. Best of both worlds. I think it's a really cool concept, and of course they've got a massive range of tyres, of course, and they're going to have different T's, of course the actual model of tyre, and different numbers, so look out for the rest of their range, but cool stuff for Specialized. More carbon wheels, this time from Reynolds. I've always quite fancied a set of Reynolds wheels, but never actually got around to riding them. They've always looked pretty cool. So these are the 309/289. That's referring, the 9 refers to the fact they're 29-inch wheels, and the 28 and the 30 refers to the internal rim width of those. So this is the wheels on screen. Now they're available in a few different options, basically around the same rim though. So they retail prices from $1,299 for a pair, up to $2,099. Now they're quite a cool concept. It's an XC set of wheels here, but they're taking the most of all the stuff they've learned from their downhill wheels, got the same layup in them. Now this gets really cool. So the front rim, 30mm, and it uses 24mm spokes. The rear rim is 28mm, and it uses 28 spokes for strength and stiffness. Use that wider rim on the front, so you've got a bit more support for the edge of the tyres there, so you can run a slightly lower pressure for more compliance, but without getting the sort of the wobbly effect. And it uses less spokes to return some of the comfort that you do lose by having a wider, stiffer rim. The rim themselves are 21mm sort of on their stack height now, so they've gone shorter. Of course, the higher or the taller the rim profile is, the stiffer the wheel is going to be. That's both a great thing for certain things, i.e. power transfer at the back end, not so good for holding onto the thing at the front end. So they've kind of got the best of both worlds there, with the slimmer, stronger wheel on the rear and the wider, slightly more comfortable wheel on the front there. So there's 4 models available. There's 2 in the Black Label series and 2 in the TR series. So there's Black Label R, TR and TRS. So starting with the Black Label, this is it on the screen. It's got the Industry 9 Hydra hubs. So that's the super high-end hubs from Industry 9. They've got a 0.52, I think it is, degree engagement on them. So it's basically instant. Those hubs are astonishing. Super, super cool. Then there's a Black Label R. Now these ones actually appeal to me a little bit more, I've got to say. So these ones have got Ringley Super Bubba hubs. Now I had some of these way back. Now they're super cool, and in a bit of a nod to the past, they're only doing them with the hubs in a sort of the turquoise, cyan blue, whatever sort of colour you'd call this. But it looks great, and you can only get them in this wheel set, so that's also cool. So I've got 4-degree engagement. Okay, so it's not the same as the 0.52, but not everyone likes a super fast engagement. I'm not sure if I do or not, to be honest, but I'm fine with 4-degree engagement, so I'd be happy with these. They've also got a drop-in ratchet ring system, so it does mean they're super easy to service. They both use SAPM CX-Ray spokes on there, great spokes, and they both use the MR5 rim construction with what they call impact dispersing matrix. So it's basically the same layup and the same way that they build their downhill rims, which are insanely strong. So that's very cool. And then there's TR and the TRS. So they use a slightly cheaper layup on the carbon there. They call it the PR3 construction. Now they've got 2 different hubs on them. They've got one with 5 degrees and 6 pulls, and one with 10 degrees and 4 pulls. So they really are kind of trying to cater for every style of option of rider there. I think that's a really cool looking set of wheels, and they definitely appealed to me, but they've always gone under my radar. Any of you lot ride Reynolds wheels out there? If you do, let us know what you think of them. I think they look pretty cool. Okay, and last up, well, obviously it was the World Championships at the weekend, and Rhys Wilson, wow, what a run. If you look on social media, in fact, if you look on Rob Warner's Instagram account, you'll see a clip of Rhys taking the most insane line through that sort of stumpy section at the top. I mean, I don't think many of the riders will mind me saying that he picked a line that made them all sort of sit up and just think like, what the hell is going on? How does he ride like that? He's an incredible rider, and those that know him on the UK scene will have known this for a long time. And also just perfect timing actually for one of his partners, Cushcore, of course, one of his sponsors on board. They launched their Cushcore video with Rhys Wilson in. And this is it on screen, as you can see. Now it's a really cool video because Cushcore isn't just a rim insert to help you stop getting punctures. It's about more than that. So it protects the tyre, of course. It helps prevent you getting punctures. It helps prevent you damaging the rim on your bike, but it also adds another feature that's not discussed as often. It actually is kind of like having an air volume spacer in your tyre. It adds a sort of, gives it more of a progressive feel. And as you can see in this video, it's shot I think 1,200 frames per second or something insane like that. You can see the tyre conforming around rocks as he's really slamming into stuff. I'm going to put the links to these videos in the description underneath. You've got to watch them because the speed this guy rides at. I mean, it's no surprise now he's got the stripes, and congratulations, by the way, Rhys. Unbelievable run, so good, and it was really good watching you sweat as well in that hot seat, and it was really good to see how emotional you were. But I think those that know you best won't be that surprised because I know that at some point this was going to happen. So huge congratulations from all of us here at GMBN, and please check that video out because it's mega cool tyre tech from Cushcore. Okay, now it's time for Bike Cave, and I'm going to hit you with something a little bit different this week. Anyone heard of YT bikes? Of course you have, Young Talent Bikes. Now they're one of the direct sale brands on the market, and of course it's very easy to buy direct sale brands these days. But what is the one problem with direct sale brands? Not be able to see them in the flesh. You know, even if you know they're excellent bikes and people tell you that, it's still not the same as being able to see them, and they've actually started addressing this. So on screen now you can see some shots of the YT Mill, which is near Guildford in Surrey, so just outside of London. Now this is a really interesting approach. We have seen other bike brands do this before, so Specialized, even they work via a distribution model, they still have their concept stores. You've seen Giant have had stores, I think Canyon had a store in London a while back. Now it's kind of interesting because we are going to see more of this. I think it's going to be more like car dealerships perhaps, but what YT are doing is more than that. They're actually selling you the experience. So when you look on their website, it's very interactive. It's got loads of cool stuff. They've done loads of amazing videos where, you know, they put some serious money into the development of this stuff. And they want to give you, the user, or hopefully the buyer of their bikes, the same experience when you go to their store. So it's just like going on a website where you look at the ISO, for example, that 29 or 130mm bike, and it looks like it's in a full anime set. There's even a steam vent on the floor and stuff. So you're really sort of immersed in how they want you to perceive the bike and the brand. I think it's really cool. It's a really nice approach. And it's not just a bike shop. You know, you can go along and see all the bikes. You can go and chat bikes. There's a coffee shop there. So it's a bit of a venue to go and hang out as well. But more importantly for riders in the UK, this is now, if you have issues with your YT bike, you want to get it serviced and that, it can be done there. Same with warranty. It doesn't have to go back to Germany anymore. And I know that there will be a lot of riders out there sort of breathing a sigh of relief, because this has always been the one slight issue really with buying direct. You know, what do you do when you have to get it warranted? You have to send it back, you have time without your bike. Well, now they are going to be addressing that in the UK. Now, as far as I know, that they've already done this in Germany. You know, they have got a demo sort of sales area, and there's now one in the US. I think it's San Clemente in California. So I think it's really cool, and it feels like YT are kind of gearing up and they're really understanding how the market is starting to work a bit. I'd love to go and visit this store myself. I haven't had the chance, obviously. Travel is still very limited for us for the time being, but as soon as things open up, we're definitely going to be taking a trip down there to check it out. Okay, now it's time for Top Mods. Now this is the section of the show where we check out all the cool modifications that you've done to your bikes. Now, usually we ask you to send in some cool modifications you've done, but last week, spurred on by a tool that I was checking out, I actually asked if anyone's made any homemade tools. And actually you sent us some really cool ones. But I do want you to continue sending in your top mods and also sending in your homemade tools, because I think it's really cool. And any sort of workarounds and hacks you've done with stuff when you've been fixing your bikes, maybe a homemade bleed kit or whatever, show us. We'd love to see this stuff, and especially if it helps other mountain bikers out there. So the link is at the bottom of the screen there, and there's another one you can click through in the description underneath. But first up, I want to show you one from Edgardo in Michigan, USA. So he works on all his bikes, plus he coaches kids mountain bike and he fixes their bikes as well. So first up, check this out, a homemade chain whip. Now that's just cool. I mean, chain whips really, to be fair, don't cost a lot of money, but whenever you replace your chain, you're left with your last chain. You can't really do too much with that other than use it for spare parts. So why not turn it into a chain whip? It's madness. I can't believe I've not bothered doing it myself. So it looks like he's got some sheet metal, cut it down, he's got like his micrometer there, so obviously he spaced it out correctly and made a really nice handle for it as well. By the looks of it, it's just really nice bit of bike tooling. I think that's awesome. And then to go along with the wooden theme there, he's made like, I don't know what you would call this, it's like a tray for your work stand. So you can see your work stand there. You've got a tray on the top with your loops and holes in it, so you can hang off the tools that you immediately use. So you've got all of your Allen keys, you've got your T25 in there, you've got your screwdrivers, your posi drives and stuff in the back. You've even got your compressor handle on the top. I think it's a wicked idea. Soup up your work stand. Why wouldn't you? I mean, I can see why that'd definitely be beneficial if you're working in a bigger space. I don't need to here because I can literally just reach over and grab something off the side, but I can see how it would be very useful for someone. So that's an awesome tool. Nice one. And then next up, oh, the good old favourite. I love these tubeless inflation homemade kits. So this one's from Gregor in Austria. He's built his own Radon Slide 160 and also built myself a tubeless inflation kit from a soda bottle, a couple of old valves, a short tube, and one of those clamping devices you find on bleeding kits. Genius. Okay, so the idea with this is using that pressed valve, you pump your air into that bottle, close the valve afterwards. This is with the clear pipe with the little closing thing shut, by the way. You then put that clear pipe over your valve with the pressed valve undone on it, close it over, and then open the little clip. And the air pressure forces its way out into your tyre, and your tyre inflates. Bingo. Work really well, although do take care if you're going to make one of these at home, because I have seen these when people have pumped them up too hard before. I've seen the valves fire off over the room. Got to be careful with that. Well, there we go. That was the end of this week's show. A little bit packed with news, not in a bad way. I like talking about bike stuff. Hopefully there was some interesting stuff in there. And don't forget to let us know what you think the coolest mountain bike model name is that's ever existed. Let us know in those comments. Correct me if I'm wrong about the ones I suggested. Tell me all the ones I forgot, because there's loads out there. Completely had a brain freeze when thinking about this. But let us know in those comments and we'll catch up on next week's show. See you later.